Hi everybody, Phil DeJean here for Dare to Draw Studios' new show, Creator Code. What is Creator Code? Simply put, we are all creators and our code is that we support each other, period. With this show, we'll be spotlighting creators in the comics industry, pop culture, and beyond. On today's show, we have writer Kwanza Osajyefo, co-creator of Black. For a quick one-on-one, then we will join the rest of our Creator Code panel. Editor-in-Chief of The Beat, Heidi McDonald, comics colorist, Zia Adams, New York City comic book shop owner, John Gorga, and via Skype, Jimmy Palmiotti, comics TV writer and inker. Please welcome Kwanza Osajyefo. All right.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you. Right on. Now, all right, can I call you controversial?
Sure. You can call me Kwanza, though.
Oh, okay, Kwanza. But can I call you outspoken?
Definitely.
Definitely. I mean, because the stuff that I've been seeing, you're just doing this thing. You are quick to tell people to shut the fuck up. I mean, that's a real, throwing out those tweets there. And seriously, you are quick to say that. What brings that on?
You know, there's just a lot of people out there who, you know, think that just because they have an opinion, it necessarily matters as much as, you know, anyone else's. Like, that makes it like a reasonable argument. Like, social media has just given us this platform where everybody can just spout off all the time. And like, it doesn't necessarily mean that the thing that you say is something that I need to respect or that I need to respond to in a way that, you know, doesn't reflect the fact that you're being vitriolic.
Right. So people just like hating. But I have to say, your first comic, Black, originally you were asking for $29,000 on Kickstarter, $90,000, $91,000. Excuse me, can I back up over here?
Yeah, Jamal would correct you on that. He was like 91.
Yeah, that is 3 times as much, for real. And then for the new one, the sequel, a White, you know, you just say throwing it out 40 and already kicking over 47. You know, just saying here, you got that quick.
Yeah.
I must admit, I also gave to it.
Oh, thank you so much.
I believe.
Appreciate it.
I believe. Now, originally, this comic, the concept of black superheroes, you know, it captured people's minds. What was the reaction to people that you saw?
It was really positive. I mean, it was just an idea that me and my co-creator Tim had come up with, like, God, like what, 13 years ago now at this point? And it was something that just struck me as, you know, tapping into, you know, an underserved market. And I came up with the idea of what if only black people had superpowers, you know? And I think that spoke to people because the minute you kind of say that tagline, people's minds just go all over the place. So I think it's just something that inspires people to imagine.
Yeah, and it wasn't just black people, people of color donating. Everybody's getting in on this.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing is that like I think while we're having this sort of like renaissance of like culture is what I call it, but particularly around like stories that, you know, reflect the perspectives of women, people of color, LGBTQIA, is because they haven't been presented before. So it's almost just like this untapped market of like stories that people haven't heard before because we've all been sort of like treated to this very almost Mad Men-esque version of the world and like how women should be, how like, you know, people of color should be. And now you're getting those very people telling stories their own way from their own perspectives. And I think people are hungry for it.
Now that you did the whole Black storyline, now it's the second is called White. What's going on in this story?
So, you know, even though like Black stands on its own as a graphic novel, I always sort of imagined it if I was so lucky to tell a trilogy story. So it's very much Star Wars-esque in that respect. You know, there's New Hope. This is Empire Strikes Back. So White is basically the context for the story. In the first story, it's about this young man, Kareem Jenkins, who gets shot and killed by the police, but superhero story, comes back to life, finds out he has superpowers.
X.
Yeah, and you know, and all the things that entail after that. But you know, his real conflict in the first story is like it's a secret. Nobody knows that only black people have superpowers. So he's really struggling with, you know, deciding whether it should become public or it should remain a secret. I'll give you spoilers because you should just read the book, but you know, it becomes public, and that's kind of where things jump off in White. So it's 3 years later, and one of the antagonists from the original book, Theodore Mann, has been elected president of the United States. And you're dealing with America now dealing with only black people having superpowers and just kind of how society reacts to that, how governments react to that. So it's more context, whereas like Black was very much about Kareem's story in this small microcosm in this like sort of clandestine like conflict. This is now out in the open and in the broader field of like, all right, now the whole world has to actually come to terms with what's going on.
Right on. I have a question. With the original comic, originally they had like the two people coming to heads over there in the superheroics thing. There was always Juncture and his team and O.
Yes.
And they were kind of like, people always compared them to Professor X and Magneto, but then logically thinking, when they were some of the writing for Professor X and Magneto, they were basing it on MLK and Malcolm X.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting comparison, because I really think of Juncture as more of a protectionist, not a pacifist or anything. Like, you know, he definitely trains his team to be ready for any sort of situation, but it's not like contrary to conflict. It's just not about like stirring up conflict. And O is not comparable to Malcolm X at all, because I think a lot of like our history tries to portray him as like this radical, but it's not like he was out there like committing terrorist acts or anything like that. He might have seemed radical because at the time what he was saying was radical. Like contextually, yes, he was telling people what he thought to their face, but he by no means was like, you know, O is literally a terrorist.
So it's what people are afraid that these people are.
Yeah.
So they're showing what they're afraid of. Another thing I wanted to ask, like, all right, I don't know if you could go in here with this, but so people see comics coming out and then they see them moving to other mediums, So is there anything going on with Black on this front? I'm just throwing it out there, just asking. I'm just asking questions here.
No, I mean, we had the good fortune from the beginning of the Kickstarter. We were being courted by studios, so it became like quite a process of saying no to a lot of offers, and we finally accepted a deal with Studio 8, which is headed up by the former head of Warner Brothers, who is distributing through Sony. So they just came out with a movie, Alpha, White Boy, Rick.
Oh, yeah.
And they signed us up for Black as like a franchise deal. So Black's gonna be a series of feature films.
Wow, that's amazing. You heard it here, folks. Very cool. Other stuff for the future. Now, I know that you had the other comics going on here. You had America's Sweetheart, you had Widows and Orphans, you had, you know, all the other jams, Devil's Die. What do you got coming up next on the comic front?
Well, I was also brought into Humanoids. If you know them, they're one of the biggest French publishers, one of the biggest publishers in Europe, and they wanted to come into the American market, and they hired me to be one of their creative architects for their new universe called H1, which is, in quotes, a superhero universe, but not really, because that's not my lane. And it's a bunch of books. I'm writing the first flagship book with Mark Waid. It's called The Ignited.
Wow.
But I had a hand, along with like Yannick Paquet and Carlos Speed McNeil, in like literally creating this whole universe and all of the like physics and laws for how it's going to operate. So Ignite is the first book, and then there's also Omni, which I'm really excited about, and Strangelands are going to be our first forays into that market. So keep an eye out for it. They're coming out in August.
So looking forward to that.
Yeah.
All right, so next we're going to move on over to the panel. So come on over, Kwanza, let's do this.